Well, welcome, Peter. Thank you so
Thanks,
much for
Stacia.
joining me today for this amazing conversation that I know you and I are going to have about all things next gen giving circle. We appreciate you participating in this spotlight series because we want more people, the world, to know more about the concept and the model of giving circles, but more specifically, we want folks to see the amazing stories and the work and the impact that giving circles like yours are doing all across the world. And so I'll have you to start off, if you don't mind, Peter, by just sharing your name and your role as it relates to your giving circle. And yeah, just tell me just an overview about what you do at Next Gen Giving Circle.
Sure. And thanks for having me. So my name is Peter Williamson. I am a founder and co-chair of a giving circle in the Washington, D.C. region called Next Gen Giving Circle. It was founded in 2019, right at the edge of the beginning of the pandemic. We obviously didn't know that going in, but it has been in kind of three different grant cycles so far as we're in 2022. And we've given out about $125,000 to date to grassroots organizations in the Washington, D.C. region. So it's been a really meaningful experience and something that, as someone who has been in philanthropy at various different levels, just a really different experience that I would advocate for anyone to get a part of.
I love it. Yeah, so you all launched in 2019, so smack right before the world shut down. So I'm curious then, so who is your village? Who are the members of your giving circle? Like, how did you even find them? How they find you? How did you build this amazing community in such a short time? And especially right at the beginning of COVID when you all first launched.
Yeah, then got to give credit where credit is due. I am not a DC native. I come from the Northeast and kind of bouncing around the East Coast from kind of before, call it 2017. But when I moved into the area, I met up with some amazing people that were sort of on the front lines of philanthropy. They'd been in the city for a long time, and met up with an organization called the Catalog for Philanthropy. They do a lot of really great work, and they were looking for ways to connect to younger donors in the Washington, D.C. area. It's not a huge surprise that with an area that's so transient, um, a lot of the donors, the longtime donors, are older people that have settled in the area. And a lot of the younger donors are turning over. So it's really hard to gain traction with the sort of early mid-career professional. And so Next Gen Giving Circle is sort of born out of the idea of building a community of, call it sub 40, 45. We didn't really put an age limit on it, but the idea was to bring in people who may not have access to the larger funds. They're kind of early in their giving journeys, and offering them a space to kind of learn together. And it has the idea of a next gen giving circle is not new. There have been a couple in the Washington D.C. area, but they haven't lasted very long. And so, obviously, trying to explore a model that was more sustainable was one of our goals. But we also see some of the new practices in philanthropy, trust based giving, and really leaning into some of those new age approaches and being a kind of beacon for other giving circles in the area.
Well, clearly it worked. It resonated. Because I love, because when we think about next gen, folks immediately think about youth. And so I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate you lifting up. This really is like our millennials,
Mm-hmm.
myself included, giving circles, us that are, and which it makes sense, Peter, because I know millennials are really the next generation of givers who are inheriting wealth or not even inheriting wealth, those that are, like you said, mid-career who are starting our journeys. And now we have a little bit more capacity to give and want to be able to leverage our gifts in a more collective impact model. So I love that. So why don't you tell me a little bit more about the model though? Like how how often do y'all meet? And
Mm-hmm.
how much do your members contribute? Like just to share a little bit more about that piece.
Yeah, so from the very beginning, the goal was to be as accessible as possible. I come from a family foundation background and fully recognize how non-transparent that space can be, right? Really, really fortunate to have the experience of like kind of being thrown into a grant making system. But giving circles are democratizing that. They're bringing accessibility to the space. And so obviously you don't want to put a huge cost barrier in front of someone who may not be able to afford $150 a month, $1,000 a year kind of thing. So we put the floor at $20 a month and said, if you can give us $20 a month and donate to whatever is meaningful to you. So we had ranges from 20 to, I think it was up to $150 a month, right? And in the first year, we got about 75 people to join us, just kind of internal network, which was really neat. And again, like the people that I was with, sort of the five folks that were really kind of helping lead the effort, they had a deeper connection and base in the city, but that gave us some momentum to really pool a decent sized pot of money together to show some other people in the community that this is a real thing and you can give a little bit more than what you might be able to do personally. And so our format was always, try to get people in the door and to be a part of the community. I would say for some, it's being a part of something bigger. For some, it's really wanting to learn through the process. And so our goal was to create an executive committee of people who really wanted to help lead and steward it. And then there was a group of people that were kind of along for the ride. And we have bi-weekly newsletters that we send out to keep people updated, and about monthly-ish meetings. They've been mostly virtual in the pandemic time, to kind of help move the governance and administrative pieces along. That group is about 8 to 10 people.
So y'all are busy. Y'all meet monthly. You're keeping your members busy, which that's like the lives that we live right now. I feel like everyone's busy, but that's awesome to hear. So y'all pull the resources monthly, pull the resources monthly. So then tell me about, because you all have, like you said, you've given over $100,000 in grants, which is amazing. And shout out to all the next gen philanthropists that's really pushing money out where it needs to be, which is in the community. Tell me, let's talk about these grantee partners. I want to hear about that magic. Tell me a little bit, give me a story or something, or example of a fund or a grant that you all have given out and the impact that it had for the grantee.
Sure. And this has obviously been the evolution, right? I think as you learn and grow together, when you just start a giving circle, you have to figure out what is the giving circle interested in. We aren't necessarily an affinity group, right? We don't have a particular cause that we came around at the beginning. It was really more of a sort of age and experience group of people. And so where do you give in a community when you don't necessarily have a topic of interest? That took a year or two to really hone in on a particular intersection point. And I think being in DC, having a lot of these conversations, I mean, you think about what's happened between 2019 and now with conversations around racial equity, health equity. There's a lot of kind of crisis points that have boiled over. And I think the group really resonated with this intersection of racial equity and economic empowerment as something that we wanted to focus on. There are a lot of amazing frontline grassroots organizations in DC that don't get the kind of notice that they deserve, just because they might not have that professional grant writer. They may be a volunteer run organization. They might be kind of under the systemic pressures of being a person of color that started an organization and don't have the network, right? And so being able to lift up those organizations and give them some kind of credibility with a grant is that first stepping stone for a lot of organizations to be able to go and find an institutional funder or convince their community that, hey, there are other people that have a good pot of money that are willing to invest in us. And so when we started thinking about where do we fit in the cycle of philanthropy, obviously we're not the Gates Foundation. We're not someone who's going to give millions of dollars, but we do know that we have the weight to give an organization that's small, a step in the right direction. And so that was a philosophy that's evolved over time. Over the last 3 years, we've given, we do a request for proposal cycle, usually in the spring, summer. And we have a review committee that hosts site visits, which have been virtual, and review proposals that have come in. And we've really tried to educate members around designing a proposal that is equitable, right? And that is a challenge. And I think larger institutions struggle with it because they're kind of like a tanker ship. They're harder to move and change. They might have bylaws or just structures in place that are harder to move. Whereas smaller organizations like ours can be really nimble and test boundaries. And that's something that we really wanted to lean into. And so we tried to create something that's short, sweet, asking questions that we can review, and then using that moment to offer workshops and things for people to understand about some of the systemic barriers that people might face, ways to review proposals in a way that isn't that obviously we all come to the table with bias, but at least acknowledging it and trying to combat it in some way. And then at the end of the day, celebrating with some of the grantees. We've given to about doing the math in my head, 16, I think. It's been about 5 a year. This past cycle, we had 4. And then to kind of leverage this best practice of multi-year giving, we usually give a small grant to support the grantees of the previous year. So like in this year, we gave to 4 organizations and we gave about $40,000 to them. And then we gave $2,500 follow-up grants to our 6 grantees from last year. So this year in total, we gave $55,000.
Oh my goodness, I love that model so much. So you're okay. So you are issuing new grants to these grassroots organizations, but then not forgetting, still leaning back because it is ongoing. It's recurring investment in some of your previous grantee partners, and they don't have to apply for the grant again. Oh, Peter, that's awesome. That's so awesome. Did y'all hear that? That is a unique way, and that is sustaining organizations so that they can continue to grow their capacity. To your point of what you said about these oftentimes smaller nonprofit organizations, that's what they need. They need staff. They need recurring multi-year level gifts to really get them over the hurdles that they need to continue to grow. So I love that so much. And it sounds like even with your members, you shared that some of the challenges that you all face in community, but then how you're addressing those with just that learning piece with your members by really educating them on how to be more, it sounds like, trust-based kind of funders. So why don't you tell me, so that puts me in a mindset of like, you all are not just giving finances. Yes, you're giving financial resources, but it puts me immediately in the beyond the dollar mind, not just for your members, but wondering, do y'all also have that same spirit with some of your grantee partners, like in how y'all support them beyond the dollar, like how you going beyond the financial piece with your members and taking them into learning experiences and things like that as well? And if so, tell me more.
Yeah, and very transparently, that's the thing I think we're really working on to do better. I think it's one thing to kind of put money in a pot and disperse it and celebrate that idea. It's another thing to really lean into the relationship and say, how can certain members who resonate with this cause or this particular organization, how can they go volunteer? How can they go serve on a board? How can they go advocate for this organization in other ways, whether it's on social media or in their own networks? And I think there are certain members of the circle that are already kind of predisposed to that. They might work for a nonprofit themselves. They may work for a kind of philanthropic serving organization, right? Overseeing other grant making practices in different spaces. And I think those people kind of understand the power of that, right? They may or may not have time to give more of their energy and outside of the dollar to the organization, but they understand, what a little can do. Some of the things that we're working on right now is to figure out how we can help support people who don't really know what that next step is, right? It's one thing to go to a volunteer event and, whether it's an environmental organization, go pick up trash in the local park, or, you're working on a grassroots advocacy campaign and they just need people out and helping spread the word. Getting involved, that one really small step is a really big deal for getting them more involved in that organization. And so trying to figure out how we can match individuals to organizations Obviously, democratic process, we've picked this intersection of economic empowerment, racial equity. That might be an interest of a lot of members, but it may not be the like primary interest of some. And so how do you continue to drive the conversation with those members and make sure that they feel like they're being heard and involved? And so we've got some kind of fun ideas on the horizon. But it's something that a volunteer organization is really going to struggle with unless they have someone who's championing the effort, right? And our leaders are great, but we all have day jobs. We're early mid-career
Right.
professionals, right? And so we've been looking for kind of capacity building partners that can help us, really enhance the philanthropy of our work, right? It's the dollars we can do on our own, but the organizing social events and ways to give back in time and talent is something that it takes a good amount of work to organize, and you want to make sure you can do that right.
That's real. And I thank you even for lifting it, because yes, we often say the 5 T's, right? Philanthropists are known for giving their time, talent, treasure, testimonies, and their ties. And so, and as you very beautifully said, in terms of like, how do you match those 5 T's within your member and with the needs of the organization, is something that we all are still trying to figure out. And so, and I know that you all, in addition to like, you leaning into the spirit of that, y'all have some other cool things on the horizon, including like this transition, or y'all have some things going on with a nonprofit in DC and growing the circle that way, because I know you all are thinking bigger of other ways and how you can leverage your impact. So why don't you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure, yeah. And one of the things that we're really lucky to have in the DC area is a network of giving circles. I think uh, there's for those who are outside of the DC area, the DMV is the DC, Maryland, Virginia acronym. So there is a thing called the DMV Giving Circle Network, and it's a kind of consortium of 20 to 25 giving circles that have kind of opted into pooling their best practices, coming together once a quarter and sharing what's working, what's not, pressure points, celebrating wins. And it's been a really nice way for us to kind of pool both like people's energy and bring in resources that can collectively help us. And Philanthropy Together has been obviously a wonderful supporter of that, right? And we'll bring in speakers and be able to offer small stipends to those speakers to thank them for their time and expertise. But instead of them having to go around to 22 giving circles and share the story, they can come to kind of our quarterly meeting, and now all of the giving circle leaders can pass it down. And so things like that are really good ways to bundle learning and try to make things more efficient, which I know in the nonprofit space, especially in a place like DC, there's a lot of siloing that happens. People kind of work on their own just because it's a really hard environment to fundraise and to do this kind of work. But the more you can partner up, the better. That's at least my philosophy. So that's been a really nice network. And then there are, again, DC is very lucky to have an organization that I mentioned earlier called the Catalog for Philanthropy that there are a bunch of different ways to kind of describe it, but it's an organization, philanthropic serving organization that has a group of volunteers that review organizations in the region every year, and they create a catalog. It is still print, but it started as a print catalog to say, here are some of the best in the region. And it's a resource that donors can use to have kind of peace of mind, right? They don't necessarily have to do the heavy lifting if they have seen experts go in and vet these causes. But it's a way to really kind of give cred to the organizations. And we've seen the catalog really evolve over the last 5 to 10 years, and thinking about where it fits in the philanthropic journey. And I feel like it provides us a lot of capacity and support as a giving circle. Like any giving circle can really lean into an organization like that that's focused. They have staff, they have people that are working every day to think about the nonprofits and how to support them and how to ask questions about equity. And those are partners that, if the communities that you're in have, definitely lean into them and figure out how you can leverage their people and talent and resources, because that will just make the effort for each giving circle leader a little bit easier.
I love that y'all have that catalog. I feel like every city needs a catalog. Like that is
Agreed.
seriously, that is such a phenomenal resource, Peter. Like in
Yeah.
terms of, because we often hear from giving circles, of course they are looking for ways and how they can better make more equitable and grounded decisions around who they fund. And so that sounds amazing. And I love the spirit of collaboration that y'all have in DMV about the network and coming together. We encourage all the listeners, we encourage all giving circles to lean into that kind of collaborative spirit, because we're all in the same work together. So I love that you all get together quarterly to really just have that best practice learning circle up kind of vibe where y'all can share resources and figure out other ways and how y'all can leverage your impact together.
Yeah, no,
Um,
it's exactly
that's
right.
just amazing.
Yeah,
I
the
already
partnering
love
piece is great.
DC, Peter. Like
Yeah.
now you just make me love it even more. I was there and I just there is just such a collaborative spirit that's in DC right now. And maybe because that's our capital and I get it, but maybe it's just, I don't know what is it, but you all are definitely on to some best practices that is very helpful and useful for us. I'm in Texas, so thank you for sharing that. Any other resources or advice that you feel like if folks don't have a catalog, Peter, in their community where they can vet and find these amazing organizations, like what are the advice or a resource do you feel that folks can lean into and tap into that can kind of help them with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's so, you think about a catalog, it's kind of like a localized guide star. So if people are familiar with Guide Star, they've got a badge, or great nonprofits, right? They have a badge. It's a way to give cred to an organization. A catalog is a localized version of that. You might have a community foundation that does something similar, or at least is supporting organizations. And usually, if the community foundation is focused on it, they have the best interest in the community at heart, right? And so looking at other funders who are really local, regional, figuring out what level of nonprofit they're most likely supporting. So in the instance of the catalog, they have kind of a budget range that they focus on. Most of the Next Gen Giving Circles grantees are under that budget range, for the strategy of, if this organization can get a grant from a giving circle, well, now it can leverage that to get more funding elsewhere and eventually move into a space like the catalog, right? And get into that resource. And hopefully the catalog obviously is trying to graduate people out of their program too into even larger grants. And so again, figuring out kind of where you fit in the ecosystem is something that a funder of any size should think about.
I love that. All right, Peter. So we talked a lot a bit about Next Gen. You guys are doing fabulous, fantastic work, and even I just appreciate you lifting up the energy and environment, the community of DC, DMV, of kind of like what you all are doing. But I want to take this last piece of our time together to really talk about you. I've been wanting to know more about the person, because you've been in this work and you shared that you've been, connected in your work with the Family Foundation. But what do you love the most about being a part of a giving circle and just this movement as a whole?
Yeah, and I think, just kind of alluding back to some of the things that I've shared in the stories, right? It's the accessibility and democratization, right? It's bringing an opportunity to be able to support community organizations at a higher level than you'll probably be able to do for most of your career in life, right? I certainly don't have $50,000 to give away tomorrow, right? I don't think a lot of people do. But having the power to do that obviously has there's a lot of learning lessons to be had in there. There's a lot of ways that you can kind of learn about yourself and people around you and create community. And from the Family Foundation perspective, that has been incredibly influential on at least my thought of philanthropy and how to do it better and improve. And I just feel like if more people have that opportunity, more people are going to have the awareness of what nonprofits are doing, what their pressure points are, And when you get that Giving Tuesday, we're just past Giving Tuesday here,
Right.
that Giving Tuesday email, they'll look at it or maybe give it a second look, right? I mean, there's an incredible amount of time that's put into fundraising to the point where if you're not in the nonprofit sphere, there are a lot of people working behind the scenes that you don't see, and they're not getting to do the thing that they love or why they joined the organization, right? They're going out to fundraise because they need that to sustain the organization. So to think about as giving circles or as giving entities, how you can make it as little burden, put as little burden as possible on the organizations, especially the small ones. It just feels like you're making an impact and you can kind of be at the ground level with them. That to me is something that I've really enjoyed with the Giving Circle community, something that family foundations are a little bit less quick to
Mhm.
do. But it also gives me practical expertise that I can bring back to a family foundation and say, here's something that worked in the community. How can we use it? Or how can we apply it to what we're doing as a larger entity? And then on a professional level, my day to day is I'm a game designer now. I was a professional athlete for a few years, but really seeing communities at a point of play and how can you use play in a collaborative way, right? Like how can you bring people together in a similar space? There's a lot of synergy with giving and trying to get people to see each other. And pandemics are hard to do that, but
Right.
I think giving people creative outlets to come together, to enjoy time, to learn about causes is sort of what I'm all about.
I love that so much because we often in this work, it while it is work, it's fun. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm even glad that you even lifted up that the just the power of play of because that even as adults we have to remember to do that, to tap into that creative, pull in creative juices from back up front and to share it out loud. And so I definitely feel your fun and passion for this movement. And I actually think that that's such a good learning lesson and advice for anybody who is interested or in joining a giving circle or starting a giving circle. But just pulling that out, just making sure that's my advice. I really actually think that's good advice is to remember to have fun in this and
Mm-hmm.
that's the beauty of this. But what advice do you have for somebody that is interested in starting and leading a giving circle? Because as we shared, it is work, but we it's necessary work, it's community organizing work. Our work and what we're doing is so very important. And so what advice do you have for that leader out there that has a mind and a heart to start a giving circle but just might be stuck or just need that extra push to get them to that goal line?
Yeah, it's a great question. And for me, as someone who loves to learn by experience, obviously starting something and trying to make it work, like I take great pride in both like seeing something grow, but also I learned through doing. People have very different learning styles and ways that they want to work. And so take this with a grain of salt. But I think going and doing something with someone else and building a relationship. Like one of the co-chairs and I did know each other. Obviously, she has been in DC for a lot longer than I have. We've developed a really good relationship through this process, right? If you come into a giving circle, whether you're leading it or you're joining one that already exists with a friend, or you have kind of the mindset of like, I want to have a friend, right? Or build a relationship in a way that keeps you and them accountable. I think there is a better chance that that giving circle will continue and always have someone who's looking out for it, right? I've heard a lot of stories about giving circles that bring groups together. They do really well, but then the founder leaves. Then what? Right? And it doesn't necessarily have a transition plan. And so it lasts for a
Yeah.
couple of years. And while that's totally fine, if your goal from the outset was to try to create an entity that could continue to cycle new people and new leaders in, you've got to think ahead of time how you're going to steward that. And for us, we're sort of at that time cycle now where some of the founders are starting to step back and trying to bring new people in. And we're exploring some creative ways to work with partners to do that.
Oh, fantastic advice. We can drop mic there. Okay, giving circle spotlight is done. Now, I have one final and last question. That was so good, Peter. Thank you. As we all think about the future, 2023 is here. And a lot of us are really thinking about how we can really make a difference. Giving circles, joining one, starting one is definitely a way for that. And our nation right now with just our communities need or in longing to increase civic engagement in communities. And so I'm just thinking about, like so many others, the future of philanthropy, the future of just the future of our collective giving and impact. So what, in your opinion, what does that future look like for us, for collective giving, the future of philanthropy or the future of collective giving? We'll love to know.
Yeah, a big question, right? I feel like the just like the state of giving overall, and obviously I'm very much entrenched in this world. I feel like the conversations that are coming out of this space have really shifted over the last 5 years. I'm really I'm really heartened by the fact that people are starting to think about trust-based giving and thinking about general operating versus proposed projects. Yes, it's really sexy and nice to think about uh, a project specifically that you can fund and have a story behind that as an impact story. But so much of the effort from nonprofits is in that general operating, supporting the people that are doing the work. And again, figuring out where you fit into that puzzle as a giver is, I think, some of the conversations that I'm starting to see in this landscape. And so I'm really hopeful that that will continue, and that the kind of democratization of giving and using this kind of giving circle momentum that you all have helped steward along continues those conversations, and those things challenge the bigger institutions, right? Your government organizations, your tech billionaires, certain people have a lot of power at their disposal. How can they democratize that power, and really give to things that people want to support in their community, and not just kind of like a pet project? I think the more we can get to that level, the more successful it will be.
Peter, thank you so very much for your passion. We see you, we give you your flowers today for the work that you're doing in the community. And so shout out to you and all of the members, everyone that's involved with Next Gen Giving Circle and what you all are doing in DC and just to the broader area. Best of luck with everything. Where can folks find you? Do you have a social media page? Any other things you want to share out with folks before we wrap up?
You've found my kryptonite, social media.
Yes, exactly.
The thing that I do the worst. So our website is nextgengivingcircle.org. You can find us on I guess I don't know if they're major social media platforms because this is not my level of expertise, but we are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Awesome.
We're on LinkedIn. And if you look up Next Gen Giving Circle, you'll find it. I would say where we've put the most effort is kind of internal. So you'll see some very high level posts to celebrate grantees and things like that. But hopefully in the future, we'll be able to connect with partners and make it a little bit more social. We recruit members if people are in the Washington, D.C. area. Feel free to reach out. Membership at nextgengivingcircle.org. That's a mouthful, but you can also find it through our website.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much again, Peter. You guys, y'all stay committed to the cause. Circle up, find a circle to join. Find out, learn more about Next Gen Giving Circle and what Peter and his team are doing there. And we just encourage y'all to stay in community with one another because we all together are creating a change that we wish to see. So thank you again, Peter, for your time today.